안녕하세요. 오스틴 주식입니다. 친구 데이비드와 클라우드와 보안에 대해서 완전 초보자의 입장에서 대화 내용을 올려드립니다. 제가 아는 게 거의 없어서 아주 쉬운 말로 설명을 했고요. 클라우드라는 것에 대해서 가볍게 알고 가기 좋다고 생각합니다. 번역은 주로 의역을 했으니 참고하시기 바랍니다. 영어 공부한다는 생각으로 가볍게 들으시면 좋을 거라고 생각됩니다.
Quick recap. Old days, long time ago, right? You had your remote workers. They would create a virtual private network into their office. And the purpose of this was that they'd have an encoded or encrypted tunnel of traffic so that if someone were trying to intercept them and see what was going on, they were protected so you wouldn't be leaking data through that connection. And that's the importance of having a virtual private network connection. Now, they would go back to the office to access the applications and data that were stored at the office. And then as we move forward in time, certain third-party applications such as Salesforce, other office management tools then were SaaS delivered, software as a service, meaning that they're in the cloud. And so a remote worker would have to VPN into the data center, and then they go out the firewall at the office or the secure gateway to the application, and then make a round trip back to the data center and then back to the remote user. Now, certain applications do not play well with a big loop like that, and next generation firewalls, secure web gateways, VPN, all these connections can add delay times, which can impact the user experience.
Okay.
And so the user experience, the user's efficiencies because of delays and things breaking, all come into play in the traditional hub and spoke network configuration.
What is this thing? I think I can understand this part, but is this the same thing?
So over here, they've just blown that up in here. So these data centers are all the same in terms of what they could be. But here they've just decided to give you some detail that inside this, there could be a lot of lateral traffic. And so traditionally, depending on the makeup of the organization, you could have had 80% of your traffic internal and only 20% going to the internet. But as more applications move towards a software as a service model, and as more workers become remote workers, that's going to lessen the internal traffic and heighten the external traffic, the traffic to the internet.
Okay. So if there's no service like Salesforce, things like that, then the old traditional way should not be a matter, right?
So if there was no, let's get rid of software as a service and say everything is, let's say everything is on premise. Then what happens, the struggle then when everybody goes remote would then just be the VPN connectivity issues. Like, do you have enough VPN circuits or appliances to support a remote workforce? Or is there going to be degradation in the quality of the user experience because you don't have big enough circuits for the bandwidth that you need? And so where if everything is on premise, what then becomes a struggle is, do you have the hardware to support everyone being remote? And that's then the struggle with an on-premise situation, is that if you don't have the hardware, you have to get the hardware. And given that a lot of people might be looking for that kind of hardware at a time like this, it might be difficult to get the hardware that you want at a price point that works with your budget, because supply and demand, it's going to raise the cost.
Okay. So due to the COVID situation, I guess many small companies have suffered for this kind of working remote issues, I guess.
It's very possible. It's very possible. Or what happens is people sacrifice security in order to maintain productivity.
Oh, okay.
And then by sacrificing security to maintain productivity, they're then taking the gamble of getting hit with a security issue.
Okay.
And depending on how they get hit, a major security issue can put a small business out of business.
Mm.
So think of it like, okay, you're driving around and you ever have your seatbelt get stuck where you're trying to pull it out and gets kind of jammed? Think of it like a situation like that where you're a small business and you're like, you know what, no time for a seatbelt.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Gotcha.
Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to die, but if you get in a wreck, it's going to be much worse because you didn't have your seatbelt on.
Okay, so that's why we are moving to this concept, cloud concept. So this right side
Right.
is just general concept for clouding services, not only for Zscaler, right?
Yeah. So you've got the software as a service, and then over here you've got like infrastructure as a service.
Mm.
You've got your browser, people looking things up, fun, whatever. All right. Here we go. Customers accessing your web. They're now saying everything can be connected through anybody. You've got SD-WAN to help connect everything. Traditionally, you would want to get something like MPLS, which are dedicated circuits to connect everything, but they're very expensive. And so what you can do is you can use SD-WAN and multiple internet service providers to then have a similar level of fidelity in your uptime, because it's unlikely that if you're hiring 3 internet service providers to connect over the internet for your traffic, it's unlikely that all 3 are going to go down at the same time. So you've got your software defined network that you've got connected through the cloud. You've got your applications that you can put those on AWS, Azure, or Google, right? You can have your software as a service solutions that you've got in the cloud. You've got your web services that you host in the cloud for your customers to look at. And so then you can start in the cloud putting virtual machines with different sort of security tools on them in front of those cloud offerings that you have. And that's essentially what Zscaler does. So Zscaler has their data centers that are scattered throughout the world. And so if you want to go browse the internet, instead of getting hauled back to your office, you're basically going into the cloud where there is a data center somewhere. And depending on how you deploy it, maybe it's through an app or maybe it's through a policy that you push out, it's going to connect to a data center before it allows you to go out to the internet. And so in the data center, they've got their security tools that are then going to look at the website, its reputation, and does it have blatant malware on it? Are there other things like sandboxing that it can do to make sure that if you do get hit, that it can provide you with a knowledge that you've been hit before it spreads laterally. So the security tools then are in the cloud at different points to decrease the amount of delay a user experiences, as well as decrease the traffic that needs to be backhauled through your appliances on premise. And so you can just go from wherever you are remote to the cloud where everything's hosted, and you basically just bounce around in the cloud before coming back to getting the information sent back. And that means that a company needs a lot less hardware on premise in order to maintain productivity.
For the company's point of view, is it cheaper than the old way of working for this concept?
It should be.
Should be? Okay.
It should be. You can always do something wrong. That depends on how you do it. You can completely mess up stuff in the cloud. People making S3, that configure their S3 buckets wrong, and then everybody has access to all their IP or intellectual property. So it's done right, it can be secure, but done wrong, it's very publicly insecure.
Okay, then how they get the help for moving to this kind of concepts? Do Zscaler help the company for doing that, or is there any third-party companies for that?
There are tons of consulting companies that will help businesses move to the cloud. I mean, that's something I do. I help businesses move to the cloud.
Uh-huh.
So if they want help with their strategy, if they want help picking the right tools for the applications that they're developing in the cloud, or even picking the right cloud to develop their application in for the maximum security of what their application does, that's the kind of stuff we do. And I'm sure there are other people out there that do it as well. But yeah, there are definitely resources out there for businesses, and they wanted to know, based on their requirements for that application, which cloud between Azure, AWS, and Google they should even build the app on. So they wanted to get super granular on what security outcomes were possible based on what they're trying to do with the app and what each cloud as infrastructure as a service was the right one to go with.
Okay, so it depends on the company. Maybe some companies Azure is better, and
yeah,
AWS, and even the pricing wise also, right?
So it's not just, I wouldn't even say the company, it depends on what you're trying to do. You might want to put certain applications in Azure, and you might want to put certain applications in Google and others in AWS. So it's not company dependent, it's application use case, user experience, security risk balance, balancing all of that dependent.
Okay, that sounds very complicated then. Okay.
It can get very complicated, and when you're running really large applications, there's a price point that you're looking at. You're balancing the price of running it in the different cloud options, and you're running what's the risk. And so a lot of times what the security teams are tasked with doing is helping the business side of the house understand what the risks are. All right, we might save $3 million running it in this cloud, but it's going to open up these security gaps, or we're not going to be able to close these security gaps, or there's certain risks associated with it on this cloud app, this infrastructure that we just can't mitigate. But if your business side says we can tolerate that risk for that price savings, then all right, we go that way.
Okay.
But it's not going into it completely blind. You don't want to take on a lot of risk unknowingly.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You have to be able to calculate your exposure and understand it before you can make a good business decision. If I told you there's a 99% chance that if you're running this app in this way in this cloud that you're going to have a performance degradation or a security problem, you probably wouldn't take that risk.
Mm.
But if you're talking like a 0.01%, well, maybe it's worth a few million saved if you've got just a few hours downtime every year because of those risks or those problems that are associated with it.
If this is a Zscaler control, then if there's anything suspicious, Zscaler checks all the files and some strange activity. Do they check it? And
that's the hope.
Okay.
But as you know, security isn't always 100%, and so then the next thing is, okay, if you got a company, you want to also have an endpoint security product. So Zscaler misses something, you want something on that computer that your user is using, that your employee is using, to give you another layer of protection.
Okay, sounds very complex.
It can get complex.
Check your company. What's the name of it? Your company?
Our company is Secureiqlab.com.
So you got your company also mainly working for security of cloud, right?
Mainly, we can do on-premise traditional security stacks, but mostly we're focused on the cloud.
Okay, I think that's good enough. Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
Maybe you're on the YouTube. I can edit
I
it.
want to be on YouTube for Don't Go Him Joe.
Bye.
Was it 안녕 기사세요?
안녕히 가세요. Bye.
안녕히 계세요.
안녕히 가세요. I can see you now.
감사합니다. 오세진 주식이었습니다.